Hey everyone, so I was not going to make this video, and I'm looking awesome here in my sweats and t-shirt because I'm going in for a medical procedure today, which I will get into in a bit. But yeah, I wasn't going to talk about Jordan Peterson necessarily because I don't necessarily want to like get views off of using his name or his notoriety. That's not my intention. That's not what I do here. But as I was thinking about speaking to PTSD today with this whole experience, I couldn't help but go back to this video that Mikhaila Peterson put out recently about an interview that she and her dad did with this reporter with the Times. And gosh, they were just railroaded by this reporter. And I think one of the main reasons why is I think she didn't like that Jordan Peterson didn't want to speak directly about his traumatic experience that he had with benzodiazepines and getting off and the akathisia. And so his daughter, bless her heart, was his advocate and was the one who the reporter had to go through to kind of get that story. And anybody who's been through this, I mean, man, I totally get it. I get it. You know, when I was helping people while I was still getting off benzodiazepines. And it's been, over 5.5 years now. But over the years, and I'm in a much better place now, by the way, but there have been so many people over the years who have approached me and asked for help, and I was totally willing to like help people with the logistics of tapering and information and whatever that way. But when people would reach out to me and ask me for specifics about my symptoms or what it was like for me, I just couldn't. When you are that traumatized, it is PTSD, and I think people don't understand that. Like what Jordan Peterson is dealing with, folks, is PTSD. When you're asked to relive that, I mean, you get these flashbacks. I would try initially to talk to people about my symptoms and things, and I would just start shaking and sweating, and my mind would be racing and swimming, and I'd get dizzy, and because it is that traumatic. And now, look, I mean, what I often refer to this as an injury, like a medical injury or a pharmaceutical injury, but that word is too benign. It's not like you just broke your leg, okay? And I'm going to use some language here that might be kind of triggering, so just kind of a warning, because and I'm not doing it to be salacious. I'm doing it to help people understand how severe this is, okay? So I know people who have been tortured. I know people who have been raped and who were diagnosed with severe PTSD before even getting on a benzo. That's why they were put on benzos, actually, okay? And that is the language that they use to describe this experience. And it's the language I use. You are being physically tortured. And then mentally, it's like your mind is being raped over and over again, day after day, night after night. So, for somebody then to go to somebody like Jordan Peterson and say, hey, let's let's talk about this and why this and that, and start digging and why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that? Man, that triggers so many things because it relates to sort of this whole view that everybody has of that the medical profession is right. And in the case of people with this injury, the medical profession is your abuser, okay? So it's like being asked, well, why didn't you let your abuser do this? And why didn't you let the person who tortured you why didn't you listen to their advice? And it's like, no, you don't get it. And then the reason why I'm even talking about this is because, yeah, I'm going in for like the first ever sort of willing exposure to pharmaceuticals and the medical profession in over 5.5 years. And it's, I'm not necessarily coming from a place of fear anymore, but I do have to take into account that I don't even know how my body's going to respond. I don't respond normally anymore to medications. Even over-the-counter painkillers, I will have paradoxical reactions. I will have rebound effects now. I seem to be like a rapid metabolizer now, so I could very well wake up in the middle of the procedure. I don't even know. And that's okay. I've accepted that. But the one thing I have made very clear is I will not take a benzodiazepine under any circumstances. I have my bracelet here, no benzos, no fluoroquinolones. I would rather die. And yes, one dose can set people back into that syndrome, into that hellish nightmare. So, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not like, hey, just kill me, like, just let me die. No, I have kids. I have a husband. I have a work to do. But I will not willingly go back into the hands of my torturer. When you go through this, if you have a loved one going through this and they are reticent to get any kind of medical care, and you think, oh, this is so irrational, this is so, just please be understanding that what you are dealing with is PTSD. Okay, and PTSD, it's like a brain injury in and of itself. Your body has these memories. Your brain just is in this place of survival, of fight or flight. And I recall, man, every time I would have to go into the doctor with my son, when he had also been injured by an antibiotic, every time I would have to take him into the doctor, I couldn't sleep the night before, and my heart would be racing, and the next morning my mind would be racing, and I would just like get into these arguments in my head with just anticipating what these doctors were going to do and the things that they were going to say. And quite frankly, most of the time I was right. I can't tell you how many times like doctors would yell at me or leave just get so mad because I wasn't willing to put my son on psych meds because of an injury that he got from an antibiotic. And so every time, imagine that you have been severely abused by someone, okay, or tortured. And then in order to get help, you have to go to that abuser every time to get the help that you need, okay? And it's so frustrating that people can't see that. This reporter, I get where she's coming from. Actually, when I really look at it, she was upset. She was kind of angry. You could tell in the tone of this interview that she did with Jordan and Mikhaila. And people aren't angry unless they're afraid, okay? And what people are usually afraid of is that they have placed all of their faith in this system, this medical system, this pharmaceutical system, often because they're on these same meds themselves. And for somebody to come along and say, guess what? Everything you believe and have faith in could very well be wrong. Or could just be wrong enough that it could be really, really hurting people, including you or someone you know and love. Like, that's a scary place to be. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance there for people. They don't want to think about that. They don't want to admit that they could be very well in that position themselves someday. But then what you have is, so you have people who have been abused and tortured by medicine, and then they've also been gaslighted by these same professionals. I can't tell you how many times, again, I went in and to various people, when I would have to get a refill or whatever, and how many times I was told that I was crazy or that I was an addict. And then you have people who come along and then question that same experience. Well, why didn't you just listen to them? So Jordan Peterson, why didn't you just do what these experts told you to do? Why were you listening to your daughter, who's not a medical expert? And it's like, why didn't you just go back to your abuser and listen to what your abuser told you to do? They don't get it. They don't get it. And thank goodness, Jordan Peterson had Mikhaila there as his advocate, because not everybody does. And if he had not, he would have likely gone on to have had ECT, electroconvulsive treatment, which is where they shock your brain, which is becoming more and more prevalent right now. And that's another reason why I wanted to speak out on this today, because I'm going in for this procedure today, or this testing and whatever. And on the same day, one of my dear friends who did go down that route, who did not respond to psych meds and then stayed on them and was switched off and on for years and years and years and misdiagnosed, and then ended up having ECT because that's their only option when the meds don't work. She did go down that route, and she's also having to go in and face her abusers again and actually get basically stimulated electrically so they can do sort of this neurological testing. How traumatic must that be for her? Also, Jordan Peterson was put on fluoroquinolones. I found out, I didn't know that before. Same thing for me. I was put on fluoroquinolones. So it's this double whammy. And And if he had listened to those medical professionals, they would have fried his brain. And I'm sorry to put it that way, because I know that there are people who do feel that they benefit from ECT, just like there are people out there who feel like they benefit from psych meds. And you know what? That's fine. But the problem is when you have a brilliant mind like Jordan Peterson's and you apply ECT, you can create a lot of memory loss and things like that. That's what happened to my dear friend, Sarah. She lost like 30 something years of memory of her life from all the ECT they gave her for misdiagnosed hepatic encephalopathy. She was diagnosed psychotic, schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever. And the thing that really, I guess, got to me with this interview with Jordan Peterson is how this reporter brought out that he was diagnosed by these doctors with like psychosis or something like that at one point. Well, yeah, that's what they do. And when they can't figure things out and you keep having these responses that they don't understand to medications, and where you're akathisic and you're just like, and you can't stop moving, they don't have the understanding, they don't have the language for that. And so they just sort of blanket it as psychosis. But she kept pushing that. And, it again speaks to the abuse that you get when you go through this. Not only are you traumatized by the medical profession, but then you're traumatized by society when they label you. And look, these are the same institutions, BuzzFeed and I don't know, the Times, and you've got the Huffington Post or whatever, right? You've got all these outlets and all these sources that come out with these, mental health stigma, end the stigma, and end the stigma, unless it's somebody who goes against the pharmaceutical narrative. Then it's totally okay to use psychiatric labels like psychosis and schizophrenia to denigrate somebody. And you see that in politics. Look at the last 4 years. Look how often psychiatry was used for a political figure, to discredit him, as a way to slander him. And so here's this reporter doing this basically very thing to Jordan Peterson, that basically if you are labeled with one of these illnesses, then everything you say is just discredited, because you don't know any better. So all the decisions that you made, every desire that you have, it doesn't matter, because you don't know, but the experts do. And so your abuser's voice is the one that is heard. Your abuser's voice is the one that is valid, and your voice is invalid because you have been labeled with this psychiatric label. It's so hypocritical, guys. It's just incredible. And so the abuse just continues on and on and on. And again, Jordan Peterson, it was very courageous. I'm so glad that he and his daughter did speak out. I'm so sorry that they are experiencing this, but this is how it goes. This is just how it works, okay? And I just want to speak to one more thing, because a lot of people now are being put on benzodiazepines and psych meds because of COVID. And can I just say that when COVID came out, I was like, something here is wrong. Something here is really wrong. And I wasn't seeing the long-term effects of it yet. But now that I have, there's a couple things actually I did. Yeah, I have right here, because I don't remember the details without writing it down. Okay, but in 2019, there was this congressional vote to look into Lyme. And it was, who was it? Congressman Christopher Smith from New Jersey was the one who basically they wanted to do an inquiry to see if the Department of Defense had experimented between like 1950 and 1975 with weaponizing disease-carrying insects. And so this is not like conspiracy theory or whatever. This is legit. Like, you can look this up. This was in the news, okay? The House did a vote for an amendment on July 11th in 2019. If you have seen people with Lyme, and I have, because I've been going to a stem cell therapy clinic with people who have Lyme, I'm looking at these people and how it's affected their central nervous systems and their bodies and their brains. And I'm like, man, these people are like benzo people. I mean, this is so similar. It's uncanny. And then when COVID starts coming out, I'm looking now at all these long haulers, and I'm seeing the same kinds of things, these neurological things, this broad reaching, it can affect every system in your body kind of a thing, and people's hair is falling out. And I'm like, okay, so if Congress is basically admitting that, recognizing that Lyme is man-made, and then you look at COVID, which is so similar, there's no way that this thing isn't man-made. Okay. And then what comes out? Well, on January 29th of this year, there was this Bayesian analysis that says it concludes beyond a reasonable doubt that SARS-CoV-2 is not natural. Now, why do I bring this up? Because only man-made things can affect people in this way. It is so unbelievable, right? It's so insane that nobody believes you. And now maybe with COVID, maybe society will kind of begin to understand, because everybody's getting it and everybody's talking about it, that look, if we can accept that this is man-made, and if we can accept that this is a long-term issue, then the next step is to accept that the very industry that created this problem is not going to cure it. They're not going to solve it. Okay, yes, there are people who are injured severely by, like, for instance, fluoroquinolone antibiotics. Somebody just the other day contacted me. She's severely injured. Fluoroquinolones rupture tendons, okay? You can die from taking these. And she finally kind of gave in and took a benzodiazepine because it was just the anxiety got so bad and the sleep was so bad and the pain and the muscle twitching really, her muscles were tearing. So she took it and, of course, didn't respond well. And now I'm helping her taper off. So, all these people are going to be learning what we've been learning, which is you don't go to your abuser to help you with the very thing that they caused. Now, obviously, I'm not saying don't ever go to a doctor. Look at me. I'm going into a doctor today, okay? But I don't place my faith in them. I don't go in without weighing, the consequences and doing my own research and looking for alternatives. And, it's just sort of one piece of the puzzle that I include with my own will, my own choice. I don't do it because somebody else told me to. I don't do it out of fear. I never come from a place of fear and, if I don't do this, then, no, okay? And I'm telling you, there's millions of people out there who are going to have to learn the same lesson, because now they're all getting on these meds. This COVID too, it causes, psychiatric issues. Well, yeah, it probably crosses the blood-brain barrier and does various things, that Lyme and benzodiazepines and fluoroquinolones and all these man-made things do. And yes, it is horrifying. And yes, you just want a solution. You just want some relief. But I guess if anybody's story can be sort of a warning, it's mine, and it's Jordan Peterson's, which is, don't place your faith in these people. Take advice, mull it over, listen to it, but they don't have all the answers. They don't know everything, and don't just blindly put your trust in them. And if you start having if you start getting worse and you are on a medication, look at that as one of the causes potentially, because I'm telling you, your doctor's not going to. They are not trained to look at the medication as the source of the problem. They're just not. But I can tell you that, even just when COVID first came out, the pharmaceutical industry started making bank on all the people getting on psych meds and things like that. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to go off on too much of a tangent, but this is all part of sort of, I guess I would say, this system that traps people and that abuses people over and over and over again, because not only do we sort of buy into it and then, experience the consequences of that, but then everybody else buys into it too. And then they contribute to that abuse and that continuing PTSD because why isn't she a believer? Why isn't she a believer? Why is she going against the narrative? Why is he going against the narrative? He's wrong. and not only wrong, it's to the point where it's like it's evil. Like, how dare he? How dare Jordan Peterson and Mikhaila Peterson question these authority figures? They know, right? And I don't know, anybody's been through this. We all know. We've all experienced that. And it takes a lot of courage to go against that. And so if you're afraid to, sorry, my jaw's kind of like hurting. If you're afraid right now to get medical treatment, or if you have a hard time explaining this and you have loved ones who don't get it, that's okay. Because the thing with PTSD, just like a benzodiazepine injury, is you heal. I mean, if you've started to heal at all from a severe benzodiazepine injury, you know how impossible that seems. I mean, when you're in the thick of it, you're like, there is no way. First of all, how do I not die from this? How am I still living? And second of all, there is no way you can come back from this, right? Yeah, how could anybody possibly heal from something that bad and that disabling? But you do. And it's the same thing with PTSD, okay? Yes, it's a physical thing. Yes, it's a thing with your brain working a certain way, and it can affect your endocrine system, and it can affect your immune system, and all these things. But PTSD can heal too. And sometimes we go at it a little backwards. I see people trying to first start off with healing their relationships with other people or convincing other people. Look, this is real, That's not going to work, okay? You're not going to convince other people. You have to heal first. And that's why I have my second channel, because I can't really teach people how to completely heal from this injury. There's a physical aspect to it, but then there's the other emotional healing that takes place. And so I teach people mindfulness practices and things that I've implemented that have helped me to heal, but I can't do that without acknowledging the first step in healing that has to take place. And that is, connecting with a higher power. It just is. You can't love yourself and you can't love others and come from that place of love instead of fear, right? And flipping that around until you reach out and acknowledge that you are basically powerless to do this yourself. You don't, it's like you have to connect to that higher power. You need that supernatural force, whatever you want to call it, to start healing. So that's the first step. And that's why I have my second channel. And yeah, I come from the perspective of the teachings of Jesus Christ. And look, I get it. I was in groups. I was in my main group, the support group that I was in. It was like you could not talk about religion at all. And I get that, because that's triggering for some people, and that's okay. That's fine. But in order for me to be able to continue to help people, you have to talk about this. And I guess that's why I do respect Jordan Peterson and what he's doing, because he does seem to come from that perspective and acknowledge that, like, look, I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers, but he does turn to God and that sort of understanding to help people, right? As the narrative to help other people. And I see now how just attacked he's been for just speaking out on things that he believes to be true. And then now that he's, heaven forbid, spoken out on the pharmaceutical. I mean, he really hasn't spoke, but he hasn't really said, oh, pharmaceuticals are bad. But anytime you speak out against that pharmaceutical medical complex, they're going to come after you. No doubt about it. I mean, and the people that you can tell who are legit, the reporters, the whatever people that you listen to, the spokespeople, the ones that you can tell are legit and aren't just taking you along for a ride because they want the notoriety or they want the following or whatever, are the people who will speak out about the pharmaceutical industry, because that is the industry that's running everything right now. And sorry, I feel like I'm rambling, but no doubt about it, these are the people who created COVID and Lyme and benzodiazepines and fluoroquinolones and all these things that are ensnaring people, that are disabling people, that are taking away people's agency and the ability to live life freely, whether it's just the ability to have a job or the ability to have a family, to have children. it's pretty evil. And it's understandable if you have some PTSD from that. And it's okay. It's okay. Just be patient with yourself. It will get better if you are willing to really acknowledge, your own part in this, to acknowledge and see things how they are, and take back your power, and not continuously give it away to these authority figures or these people who want to just come at you and validate themselves and validate, their own beliefs and make themselves feel better about their own fears by attacking you. Yeah, that's going to happen. I'm sorry. But it does get better. And it is PTSD. So look into that. Maybe eventually look into getting some help with that. And I think I'll just kind of leave that there with you guys. And I'm sorry if this was like a little triggering or kind of harsh for people. But that's the reality. That's the reality of the world we live in, as I see it. That's been my experience. All right, so I'm going to go and hopefully be perfectly fine, after my treatment today. And if not, we'll just take it one day at a time.